Hey, it's Friday, June 14th, 2019, and this is the Pro and the Con Show, and I am your host, Michael James Ott. Well, it's Friday, TGIF, everybody out there. um, so the intent of the show is to hopefully encourage dialogue between all of us, us and our neighbors, even if our neighbors currently believe quite a bit different than we do. I talk about the coin. I've got one here on my desk, and just very quickly to touch on that. So, this coin, if I were to hold it close enough, you'd see that there's a likeness of Washington on one side, and you were born where you were born and raised where you're raised, and you're educated and all your experiences and all that up to this very second in time. And at this very second in time, you see a likeness of Washington on this dollar coin. And I sit here and I look at this same coin. It's the exact same coin, and I see a likeness of the Statue of Liberty, because where I was born, when I was born, my parents, my education, all my experiences up till this very second in time when I'm speaking to you on this video leads me to look at this coin and see a Statue of Liberty. And we can yell at each other and scream at each other on other sides of the street, opposite sides of the streets, throw stones and make placards, and you can say Washington, I can say Liberty, Washington, Liberty, Washington, Liberty. But the reality is, it's one coin. And we happen to have two distinct perceptions of the same truth, the same reality. And the reality, that absolute reality, is that there are two sides to the coin. And sure enough, there is the Statue of Liberty, the likeness of Statue of Liberty on the other side of the coin from what you're normally used to seeing. It doesn't mean that that side of the coin is false. It doesn't mean that that side of the coin is wrong. What it means is there are very often two sides to these issues, and even more sides. So you also have the edge of the coin. Okay? And so pro and con, good and bad, for and against. And so I make this series of videos because I'm strongly encouraging everyone to take the extra time. I speak of maybe an hour a week to look at sources of information that aren't the normal ones that you look at, and try to find the different perspectives, the different sides of the coin, and absorb that. Be willing to open your hearts and your minds to the idea that just because someone else was raised somewhere else and grew up somewhere else and was educated and had their experiences led them to see the coin differently, doesn't mean that isn't true. Nor should those opinions necessarily be ignored. They should, and so what I'm saying is, rather than say, well, my idiot neighbor is a supporter of Trump, or the opposite, my idiot neighbor is not a supporter of Trump, for example, a very polarizing individual for sure. Rather than do that, how about sitting down with your neighbor and saying, look, do you mind telling me, I'd like to know how you came to think the way that you do. And please, take some time and explain why you think the way that you do. And I preface that by saying I'd love you if you'd be willing to give me equal time just to explain kind of where I'm coming from, and at least we'll understand each other a little bit better. So one of the things that I do on the show is I routinely go through different websites because it's here in writing and we can see some of the bias that's in the information. Remember, look for the facts, the where, the what, the how, the when, and based on those facts, the facts, form your own opinions about what it really means. Okay, don't listen to the various news sources, so-called news sources that give you 23 or 23 and a half hours a day of opinion packaged as news. That is not news. The news is the who, the what, the where, the when. That's the news. Okay? And when they start getting beyond that, especially when it becomes anything that's political in any way, shape, or form, you can pretty much be guaranteed that they're going to have their twist in it. Now, normally, like yesterday, I was looking for, because Mr. Trump made these comments about being open to using information gained from foreign governments and foreign agents to, in the internal political elections here in the United States. And of course, that led to different coverage from these different websites that I talk about on a regular basis. The left or more liberal ones saying certain things, the more central ones, mostly just kind of reporting the facts, and then the more right-leaning or conservative ones, which generally are supporting Mr. Trump, because that's where he offers that he is, where his stance is. That's what he says. They have a tendency to report it differently than the liberal side, for example. And you all know this, right? This is not rocket science. I'm just suggesting that if we're going to, have laws, and all the laws apply to all of us, guess what? We're going to have to work together. There's 340 million of us, and we're going to have to take that damn coin and look at all sides of it and be willing to admit that the other side of that coin exists, and then take the road of, okay, now that we know and can acknowledge the truth, the pro and the con, the good and the bad, the for and against, what do we do? How do we go forward in a way that's a reasoned and reasonable thing, where you get a lot of what you want, I get a lot of what I want. None of us get everything that we want. That's just life. But we can get to a place where we're all okay with the latest legislation, the latest policies, and so on. So, looking in the websites tonight, I don't really see anything that kind of stands out as far as like one particular story being strong enough that it's being covered or not covered, as we saw last night, on all 5 of the different websites. So I did want to just talk about something else then, because there are some issues that I think we just need to talk about on a regular basis, hopefully to move us closer. So things like racism is a big one, and abortion and abortion rights, and climate change. Okay, that's one of them, and election reform and tax reform, on and on and on. But there's a whole litany of things that are significant issues that we should talk about on a regular basis. Why? Because by communicating, we get closer and closer to understanding each other, and hopefully that will bring us to a place where we're all in a reasoned place to go forward together under the umbrella of the same laws. Okay, so one of the websites is reporting that Greenland lost 2 billion tons of ice yesterday. So they had a sudden, Greenland is having a early summer and a sudden melt. Very, very high temperatures for that area of the world. And I don't know. So I'm going to talk a little bit about climate change. And I just want to say that this one incident is not climate change. It's weather. Okay? So, like a singular event, like you have a snowstorm, you have a rainstorm, there's a tornado, there's a hurricane, there's a sunny day, beautiful weather. These are singular events and their weather. And you can't point at any single one of those events and say, aha, it snowed yesterday, therefore the earth, the global temperature is not rising. Or it snowed yesterday and therefore it is rising. Okay. But the amalgam of it, right? So when you add up the events and you compare kind of a summary of the events over a particular period of time to a summary of events over a past time, say 50 or 100 years ago or 200 years ago, then now we're talking about climate. Okay, so these are kind of aggregate average changes from one period of time to a new period of time. Now we're talking about climate. And so there are two things, and these are absolute facts. So this is not opinion. I'm not telling you opinion. So one thing that is an absolute fact is that the level of carbon dioxide in our atmosphere is about twice what it was a couple of 100 years ago. Okay, and they know because we've done this analysis over the period of time. I think the most accurate one is ice cores. They take these ice cores and they can, based on the cores, they can tell how old they are, where they are in the layers of ice, and I think there's other dating methods, but they can tell, okay, this chunk of ice came from this time period, and they can, of course, extract the carbon dioxide because they can compare ice that they know was formed, 10 years ago, 5 years ago, and they know exactly where it is, compared to ice that was formed, 2,000 years ago, this kind of thing. And get a very good estimation of what the atmospheric carbon dioxide was years ago versus now. And it normally has bumped, it goes up and down, up and down, up and down, but it kind of has averaged around 200 part per million in our atmosphere for as far as we can tell, again, plus minus, but for a very long period of time, thousands and thousands of years. So the period of time that all of us would ever know or have in recorded history would know any detail about, for sure, this has been true. And what's happened in the last 200 years is that the level of carbon dioxide has increased greatly, and it's increasing not like on a straight line, but kind of this exponential or factorial curve. So it's increasing very quite rapidly now. So it's solidly twice and increasing. So that's fact number one. So fact number two is that the number of people on the planet has gone up a tremendous amount. And I'm going to show you a chart. So it's the world population over the last 12,000 years and the projection for population up through 2100. And so there's the data, and I'll put this up here, and you can freeze the video for a moment if you want to look at that chart and study it just a bit. And it's the detail toward the end, and you can look this up. It's readily available. These facts are readily available. You can look them up in encyclopedias or the internet, or there are many sources that this is factual information, the United Nations and so on. But back about 200 years ago, so roughly in 1800, there was about 1 billion people on this planet. And now there's solidly, I think it's like 7.7 or 7.8 billion people on the planet, and rapidly increasing. You saw that curve. So just like the carbon dioxide is level is increasing on that same sort of curve. The number of people are increasing on that same sort of curve. And so I want to just point out, so that's fact number 2, okay? And so for those of you that are, you listen to some of these people that, quite frankly, are from industries that would be negatively impacted if we start doing something with the fossil fuel industry. Well, if we start impacting that, then there are billions of dollars of infrastructure that they've invested in over the last decades is going to become less valuable. And they, frankly, would rather ruin the planet than acknowledge that these changes are happening. It's just like the cigarette companies would rather have thousands and thousands of people get lung cancer than to acknowledge that cigarettes cause cancer. And so they fought it tooth and nail for years, and it was only after decades of fighting with them because over money, okay, that they finally, we finally have acknowledged as a species that cigarettes cause cancer. Well, the same thing is going on with climate change. There's a bunch of people with a bunch of money invested in our current infrastructures, and they don't want to see a change because that will make their current investments worth less. And they don't give a damn about you or I. They just want to make sure that their money is there. Okay? So, and just to anecdotally, let me say this, okay? Anecdotally, there are almost 8 times the number of people on this planet than there were 200 years ago. So think about that. You're in your house, your living space, an apartment, whatever it is, and there's a people, either you live by yourself, you live with a small family, you live with a large family, you live with roommates, whatever the case might be, you have a place. The vast majority of us have some kind of structure, some kind of place where we live, and there's other people, either just ourselves or other people, in that same place, okay? So just imagine if you're a family of 3 and suddenly now you're a family of 21 or 24. Do you think the environment in your house would be quite a bit different in the place where you live? You have a family of 6, so you have a fairly large family these days. So 42. 42 to 48 people in the same living space that now houses 6. You think things are going to be different? Think the environment's going to be different? I think it's going to be different. One last fact about the carbon dioxide in the atmosphere: it is absolute truth, well known. No respected scientist, no respected engineer, I'm an engineer by training, by the way, would deny that carbon dioxide is a gas that's in our environment and in our atmosphere, and it helps retain heat. No one of any skill, no one that would be respected by anybody in the scientific or engineering community would dare deny that fact. So the carbon dioxide level is twice as high as it was and rising rapidly. The number of people on the planet is 7 or 8 times what it was just 200 years ago and rising rapidly. And those things would tend to lead you to believe that we're affecting our planet. And so even if we're not, okay, this is the only place that we're ever going to live. This Earth, this place, this magical planet, it's what we're adapted to do. It's where we live, where we will always live, because it's just impossible for us to go somewhere else. Yeah, people will say, you know, dreamers will say, oh, we could go to Mars, we could go here, we could go here. It's totally impractical to believe that any significant level of human colonization could occur anywhere, just because once we get out of this magical place that we're in, that's protected from all the cosmic radiation and all the stuff that is bombarding everything else outside of this little ecosphere that we're in, the Earth, well, our bodies just can't handle it, and we will rapidly degrade and die. We can't possibly adapt to doing that. So this is our place, and it's the only one that exists for us. It's the only place we're ever going to be, and we better take care of it. And so since it was a certain way, even if you don't believe in climate change and don't believe that the carbon dioxide is changing the environment, the fact that the environment is changing is bad. Okay, the fact that the carbon dioxide level is twice what it was and rapidly increasing, that's an indication that we got to fix that, because that's not the way it was. And the only way that this sphere, this place, is going to remain the same and allow us to live here, or, you know, indefinitely, basically, is to take care of it. So just like you buy a car, you take care of it, it lasts a long time. You buy a house, you take care of it, it lasts a long time. By taking care of it, what does that mean? Well, you restore it to the way it was when it was new. If the paint gets damaged on your car, you get it repaired so that it doesn't rust and corrode there. If your house, if the roof starts to leak, you repair it. Otherwise, if you don't do this, if you don't restore it to the way it was, then that thing starts to degrade, and eventually it's not useful anymore. Okay? Well, we're out of time for today. So again, this is the Pro and Con Show. I'm your host, Michael James Ott. I look forward to talking to you again real soon, hopefully tomorrow. And until you are watching one of these videos again, bye for now.